Thank you, Jared and Gary. Welcome to the Midweek Tackle, one of the biggest news days of the year involving one of the biggest clubs in the game, Essendon, and the sacking of Brad Scott. We will unpack every layer of that right here at the Midweek Tackle. I'm joined by my Code Sports colleagues, Glenn McFarlane and Jon Ralph, two men who have been in the thick of this story today. Now, Glenn, Brad obviously the one departing Essendon, but one who could potentially be coming in is at the forefront of this story as we sit here tonight. James Hird. Could he potentially come back? What is the latest?
The groundswell is underway, isn't it? And I can tell you that Kevin Sheedy has urged James Hird to apply for the job. And not only that, Ralphie, he wants him to get the job. So James Hird very much in the frame at the moment.
Why, I think would be the question from a lot.
I think that's an interesting scenario. As we said with that groundswell, Sheedy told me today that he wants James Hird back to put the Essendon back into a footy club that's probably lost its identity a bit. Here's a quote from Sheedy. James Hird should be coaching in the AFL now. He's being wasted. He basically said that Neil Danaher, the sense with Neil Danaher, he's very similar character to James Hird, who always loved a challenge, resilience, strength and high-end footy IQ. That's what he said. So certainly Kevin Sheedy is pushing very hard for James Hird to return. Kevin's always been a backer. Jon, you looked at this deeply as part of the Essendon Lost Years series in the months that have gone by for Code Sports. Is this real?
Absolutely, it's real. This will be the greatest coaching comeback that we've seen, and I am completely here for the drama of it. And yet it invokes such strong reactions. There are very senior people who believe that he desperately wants to coach the club. They are very much pushing him. He very much is keen to coach the club. And there are high-worth individuals who've made clear that, look, if we were to move Brad Scott on, which has happened, we'd pay some of that as long as James Hird is the man. And yet I spoke to one senior Dons administrator of the recent past today. He said, we'd be a laughingstock if we brought him back. He said we would have 20,000 fans who would cancel their memberships by next March. He cost us 10 years, he cost us 20 million, and he cost Job his Brownlow. The one thing I can't cop is to say Essendon needs to scratch the itch until we hire this bloke and maybe fire him. We can't move on. Macquarie, if they can get him into a coaching setup where he runs a full process and he wins, so be it. But otherwise, you're not handing him the gig. Is this the right decision for Essendon?
Well, strangely enough, you can see it happening, absolutely. Should it happen? No, not from my perspective. And it's got nothing to do with the sports supplements saga. We're going back 11 years since James Hird was a senior coach of a football club. That's a long time. Footy moves in a heartbeat. It moves in a matter of weeks and months. 11 years, it's a long time. And we're looking at a Melbourne Cup field out there at the moment in terms of experienced coaches who have won premierships, but also a great list of assistant coaches as well. So I think I can't see it. Well, I can see it happening, but it shouldn't be happening.
I think if you run the process there and all of a sudden he's up against a Longmire or a Hinkley and all I've done in the last 10 years, it's astonishing, it's preposterous to think that he would get that gig. That's not what a senior club does, a serious club does. But if those blokes move out and if it's against a first-timer, well, that's possible for a club that I think wants to go for a senior candidate. I can make the case that he would have been a coaching great. So he only was there for 4 years at Essendon. Well, that's what everyone's spoken to us for the Essendon Lost Years project. So many people say, you know, he could have been something exceptional. So those 4 years, so in his first season, he takes the club to finals. They're 11-4 in the infamous year, and then the injuries hit. The next year, they're 14-7. They're kicked out of the finals. He takes a year off. He comes back. Now, in that year, everyone says he was no good. He got sacked by the end of the season. Well, of course, they got cleared by Asada in the days before the round one opener. And then 6 rounds in, when they're 3-3, WADA appeals through Kaz, and the arse falls out of the season. There's no way he could ever compete. And so I'm not saying he should be the coach, but the people out there that would say James Hird must be our coach, they're not saying it because it's James Hird, the saviour. They're saying they have seen how great this bloke can be.
Kevin Sheedy's saying exactly that same thing now, and we know how hard he fought to have James Hird be Brad Scott back in the end of 2023.
Well, this is interesting. I'm keen to get your thoughts on this because as we sit here tonight, he hasn't been ruled in or ruled out was the terminology used by Andrew Welsh, who had enough space to drive a semi-trailer through of whether he wanted to shut the door on that today. He most certainly didn't do that. James Hird tonight has been at Port Melbourne VFL training. He is yet to address whether he actually wants the job. But how close did he actually get last time? We know Sheedy was backing him heavily, but how close was it?
Well, you talk to people who were pretty close to it. They say that he wasn't even second, that he ran a pretty distant third. There are other people out there who were on the panel who told Essendon players at the time at a Brownlow medal function, well, he's the best candidate, but he won't get it because of James and because of all the baggage there. Now, those players are really upset by that. I think they haven't spoke to some of those senior leaders. There's a great misnomer, though, that the only reason that he wanted this gig was for career restoration, so he could restore a tarnished reputation. And I think that's what some of those people on that panel thought. I think what he has told other people is, the reason I wanted to be at Essendon is because it's a truly great club and I have passion for it. And that shouldn't be seen to be a disadvantage for me. So it'd be an extraordinary comeback. But, look, he got sacked in 15. 7 years later, he applied again. He wants to do it again.
Clearly wants to do it.
Yeah, he believes that this club is great and he can see where it can be again. The only thing I think he should do is apply for this gig. And if it is that he misses it, then he says, that's it. I put my hand up. I won't apply again because it is distracting the spectre of me forever haunting this football club as someone that everyone like Brad Scott would say it was a complete distraction, that the spectre of James Hird was hanging over his head.
It needs a full stop, doesn't it, in this situation? It needs a full stop. We didn't get that full stop at the end of 2023. It certainly needs it now.
Well, the full stop has certainly been put on Brad Scott's tenure at Essendon. Now, let's go back to the man who has departed. How did we actually get here today? Why did it happen now?
So my understanding is the club, I think a couple of weeks back, decided that they were going to sack him. It was going to be a process that would probably last through to the bye. And I think as the losses built up, they just couldn't find any reason why they would continue him on until, of course, those two games, West Coast and Carlton. So he wasn't developing the players. He wasn't improving the defence. He didn't lose the players, but he probably never had them. He didn't really communicate well with the young players. And the older players liked him, but he never inspired loyalty in them. I think it probably got back to Andrew Welsh that he felt he was losing support, and so he probably whispered some negative comments there. And I think Welshie probably realised that was happening. Carlton and Tassie were in the coaching race. I think the club knew it was a financial thing. How do we sell hope? How do we sell memberships? How do we secure players? How do we retain players? So really, in the end, it was just a very, very easy call from that Essendon board.
What did you make of the comments today? It was about the manner of the losing, wasn't it? It wasn't necessarily about that Dreamtime game. I sat in the outer for that loss to Richmond. It seemed like the injuries were mounting and that maybe that was the ultimate excuse for them to maybe wait another week or two. Obviously, West Coast loom this weekend and then Carlton in the week following in what will now be the interim cup, really, against Josh Fraser at the helm there. But it seemed like a slow build over recent weeks, the way that they lost.
And as John said, the way they've lost has been the issue, hasn't it? 1 in 23, 24, I think it is now. That's just not good enough for a coach. You can see what they were trying to do. The timing is the issue, I reckon. That's the thing that sort of concerns me a little bit, Laura.
Yeah, it just felt a bit gross, didn't it? It was sort of the word that really came to mind, particularly off the back of the tragic passing of Neil Danaher last night, a great Essendon person, and we'll get to the tributes that are looming for him shortly, and duly so. But I think it was one of those ones, wasn't it, where everyone sort of knew that this was going to happen. John, as you said, he wasn't the man for 2027, but did it have to be today? Yeah,
awful timing, wasn't it, with, not only one of the games greats, Neil Danaher, passing away, but one of the club greats as well. And Kevin Sheedy was really disappointed today. He said he was really disappointed at the footy club that happened today. It had moved quickly yesterday with the board. So I spoke to Essendon tonight, and I can tell you that they did speak to the Danaher family this morning, very early this morning, as well as Terry Danaher as well, just to offer their apologies for the way this played out. Their belief was that this was going to get out. There was obviously board meetings yesterday, board discussions. They were convinced that it was going to get out. They obviously told Brad last night, so they were concerned, late afternoon. And when the news came through, the awful news about Neil, they felt like it was going to get out anyway. But the good news is they at least went to the Danaher family and they were, appreciative of that conversation. And
I think Andrew probably should have just addressed that really smartly at the start of his press conference. He was asked about it and he talked about how news travelled fast. But he offered a nice tribute early on. But if he just said, these were the circumstances, we're really aware of it, we understand the talkback people are hanging us, and this is what happened, I think that would have been more appropriate.
And it is a 24-hour news cycle now as well, and that was their perspective on that.
It is. Let's talk Turkey. John, what is this actually going to cost the Essendon Footy Club? Because we know they re-signed Brad March last year for another 2 years. He's got 18 months to run on this contract.
So Essendon is setting fire to a massive pile of cash. And they've been doing it, let's face it, for the last 15 years. So, we told you last month it's a full payout. That's what the club believed he deserved when they extended his contract. And so he's got 5 more months of this year's contract. So it's probably something like $1.4 million. So that is $5 million in total since 2011. on coaches that are not coaching this football club. 2 years of Matty Knights, 2 separate seasons for James Hird, a year for Ben Rutten, now Scott. So, as the CEO, Tim Roberts, said today, there are salary cap implications. If you pay an extra $500,000 in the soft cap next year, you pay about $350,000 of tax. If you pay $1 million, which is his wage, then you pay about $750,000 in extra tax. And so, look, they'll find ways of creative accountancy. They might try and spread it over 2 years. But if they're paying all of that money next year, it's an extra $750,000. That is $1.7 million for Brad Scott not to coach your club when you didn't need to extend his contract in the first place.
But that's the whole point. They didn't need to extend it, and they need more development. They need to spend money in different areas, and the money's going elsewhere. On
an administration that aren't there, which is often the case with these re-signings too. Now, often in these cases, we dredge up old comments that the administration and executive have made in years gone by. In the case of Essendon, it was only weeks gone by, wasn't it, with the CEO and the president firmly backing their man in Brad Scott in as the next premiership coach. You only have to look to days ago.
Well, I'm giving Andrew Welsh a pass mark for the comments after the Melbourne game. I think that this club thought they'd go to gather round, they'd get smashed by Melbourne, and we actually need to tell these fans who are about to revolt what our plan is. If you've got to tell them the plan, you've got to pretend that you really believe in Brad.
Premiership though, Ralphie.
Okay. Well, so what do you say? We think he might maybe one day potentially win it. You can't have weasel words.
You
don't
utter the P word. You don't utter the P word.
All right, so I'll give him a pass mark, you won't. The Tim Roberts one was the greatest own goal of all time. Now, you know, I think it shocked a lot of people who are close to him that he actually did it. I think he was advised by some people, if you've got nothing nice to say, you say absolutely nothing. Now, the circumstances there, he did a half-hour interview with Channel 7. Now, they broke it up into 3 short grabs about the coach, which they put together. That's exactly what they were going to do. They did absolutely nothing wrong. And so then the first comments we have ever heard uttered from the mouth of Tim Roberts, their new CEO, are something that were at least a white lie, maybe an outright lie. He knew at that stage, let's face it, they were going to move him on. It just seemed like a catastrophic own goal. For what positive? When none of the Essendon fans at that stage thought that that was going to calm the farm or put those, those detractors at bay.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? You've had a very close look at the list as well, because I think attention now turns, Glenn and John, to how are you going to keep some of these players? Nate Caddy is a little bit of a worry. Zach Merritt, I mean, the obvious one. He's spoken to our colleague Tyler Lewis today and said that it was a random guy in a cafe who broke him the news this morning. He was doing some training notes at the time and someone yelled out from across the cafe that your coach has been sacked. So, I mean, that just goes to show how quickly these stories move. But they're going to have to move quickly to keep hold of some of these guys. Yeah,
they will. So Nate Caddy's contracted to 28. I mean, if you speak to people really close to him, even though we talked about mediocrity a couple of weeks back and not wanting to accept it, I think he's in. I think he's very much part of the solution. He's not the problem. They've got to build people around him. The one thing that they have that Carlton hasn't got is that they're down in the deep pit of despair. They're on the way back, whereas Carlton probably, until the last couple of weeks, were coming down. So you've got Caddy and Zach Reid as your bookends. You've got Farrow and Roberts as your halfbacks. Roby looks an outright star. So did Sharp until he did the dislocated the shoulder. Zach Merritt's going to go. Ridley's going to go. But that potentially gives you 5 or 6 picks within the top 20 through 22 or 23. Look, it's a long haul, but you just go back to the draft and maybe you have a crack at Jed Walter, but for the first time you get that massive nucleus of young draft picks that Essendon has never had in the last decade.
Which they haven't. And you look at it, they've got 2 years to get Nate Caddy right, haven't they, in that sense? So they've got to be able to do that and to frame that. I'll just challenge you on the one thing about with Carlton. You talk about Carlton. Carlton's senior guys, a little bit more reliable, dependable, and will be there at the club next year compared to Essendon.
No, that's a great point. And let's face it, those Essendon blokes have shown them to be all the things that we've said, that they've been weak and they've been wish-washy. So that's what happens under Dean Solomon. He gives them a chance to redeem their reputations because they are at rock bottom right now. Yeah, he is. And he bleeds red and black.
He does. Who I guess takes the helm could determine who stays and who goes. In that player sense, it always can come down to the coach. I mean, we've got 3 clubs in the market now. It makes you wonder whether Carlton's move maybe did influence Essendon a little bit. So the Bombers, Carlton and, of course, Tasmania looming large in that coaching market. If I sit here now, it depends on who I am as to where I'm wanting to go. If I'm Ken Hinkley, I may be looking a little bit closer to Tasmania versus a Jamie Graham or an Adrian Hickmott who was really clear that he feels like he's ready to be a senior coach. Do you have a pick of those 3 where you'd rather be?
So GWS won final. We're in a final in their 5th year. So I reckon that Tasmania will still win a final.
What year, Ralphie?
Well, in their 5th year, which will be before Essendon and Carlton win their next final. The one thing is you connect the dots. Kenny Hinkley was due over $500,000 from Port Adelaide last year. He knew that if he worked at a club, all of a sudden, then he gets the money from that club rather than Port Adelaide, so he went and worked in the media. Yeah, I think he's basically got to be top of the queue for the Essendon Football Club, given he's admitted again tonight he's already had multiple conversations. I think he likes the look of this list. And, yeah, look, the favourite often gets beaten in these races, but I think Kenny's the man right now.
Yeah, what would you do with John Longmire? He's the fascinating one as well. Like, when he left, he left as a grand final coach, obviously losing another one. He clearly wants to coach again too, doesn't he?
What's your vibe? You've written his book. Yeah. It's coming out later this year. You've spent more time. Don't give us the promo, Mac. That's OK. What's your view on what kind of club he wants to coach?
Yeah, I think we've seen that on AFL 360. I think he'd rather, come into a club that's, obviously he's going to take a bit of time, but he wants to come into a club that's established in that sense. Whether Essendon is the right option there, he's been waxing and waning, as we know, and we've seen that. Whether he wants to coach again as well, I think deep down that burning desire
he wants to
have another crack. He definitely wants to coach.
Does he want a 5-year rebuild, which Essendon would be?
I think he'd take 5 years. And where else is he going to? Carlton's a 5-year rebuild.
Yeah.
Tasmania's 5 years as well. So wherever he's looking at the jobs that are available now, it's 5 years. Does he wait another year? Does another club come up? Who knows? You've got to sometimes make the call at that time, don't you?
What about the fan perspective? As I said, I sat in the outer at Dreamtime. I saw them throwing the scarves and leaving the game early, obviously incredibly disappointed. You had a different perspective in the rooms. Yeah,
it was interesting. They've been one of the great power bases, supporter bases of, the AFL. Even in the dark years in the last 25 years, they've always stuck fat, this footy club. I just noticed, a couple of weeks ago we saw at the Fremantle game there were 25,000 there. That was alarming to Kevin Sheedy when I spoke to him today. The crowd was terrific on the weekend, 78,000, last versus second last, great crowd. Seemingly a strong Richmond connection there. The Richmond supporters came out in waves. I just wondered in the rooms there at Essendon, it just seemed like there were fewer people in the rooms there after the game. You know how you get into a game. Now, admittedly, it was a hard game and they got a lot of injuries, but it just seemed like there was a smattering of less people in the rooms and that as well. And I think even with the news today of Brad's sacking, there's a situation there where I think a few supporters have been a bit put off by the club in recent times. Maybe that changes now with a change of coach.
Lauren, my mates who were there in that crowd, they said, we lost and we didn't care anymore. We were completely apathetic. I think that showed why the change needed to be made.
Yep. That was the vibe.
Absolutely.
And I think hundreds of comments on codesports.com.au today. They are restless. Yep. They are ready for change, and they have got that at Essendon today, of course. Essendon finally, some would say, parting ways with Brad Scott. So we'll have more on that, as I say, on codesports.com.au. But the tributes have rightly flowed over the last 24 hours following the tragic passing of Neil Daniher. Glenn and John, we knew this news was coming, as so many have said over the last couple of days. It didn't make it any easier. The family have led a raft of tributes. There's calls now for statues and more tributes.
Hall of Fame
to follow. Exactly. There's a lot for the AFL to weigh up here. So I can tell you that they are looking to lock this in the next 12 to 18 hours. So we should expect news from the AFL tomorrow morning as to what the sort of uniform plans are across the competition to pay tribute to a coaching, playing and just life great, really, in Neil Daniher, who's led that charge in the Fight MND capacity there. So Melbourne, as we sit here tonight, is lit in blue, the big freeze blue, in tribute to Neil Daniher. There's been talk of black armbands from a number of clubs. So I think there's a push from the league at the moment to get a bit of uniformity. They obviously want to pay tribute, and rightly so. There's talk of, gatherings before the games of the two teams. So I think we'll have more to play out over the next 24 hours on exactly what this weekend is going to look like. But all eyes, of course, on this famous game, the King's birthday clash. I mean, speaking to Collingwood and Melbourne today, it's looking very much like this could be the biggest one ever. The current crowd forecasts are for 90,000 plus.
Wow.
That almost feels like unders, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think we'll push closer to the 100,000 in that sense. And I can't think of another person in football that, in my time in football, who has impacted on so many people, not just football people, but across Australia. He's come from this little dot in New South Wales called Ungary, one of 11 children, and yet he's impacted across Australia. It's just an amazing story, and his family, extraordinary.
Should he be elevated to the Hall of Fame just because of romantic grounds? I mean, the AFL doesn't like to give that out. Of course, Lou Richards, with elevation to legend status, they held back on that. So we'd all love to see it, but is it a challenging decision for the Hall of Fame committee?
Well, it is. It's a really challenging decision. I'm a romanticist. You know that, Ralphie, in that sense. And it was a similar debate with Lou Richards, whether Lou Richards should become a legend or something like that. But I think Neil cut down so tragically in a sense from a footy sense. But what he did for the game, I think he should be in.
I don't think you'd find any opposition. A hero to the game, a hero to his family, and a hero to Australia. We'll miss you, Neil. A huge night of Thursday night football looms under the lid at Marvel Stadium. St Kilda taking on Hawthorn, all live here, right here on Fox Footy from 6:30pm. Mark Howard and Matt Hill leading that call team from Docklands. It's going to be an absolute beauty, that one. Hawthorn at Marvel Stadium this week, officially out of Tasmania. Glenn, what's been the fallout?
Yeah, Hawthorn's determined to exit Tasmania and Launceston in the right possible manner. They're going to have a celebration. We know that next in July they'll have that 25th anniversary game against Melbourne. Huge game down there. But what they want to do is celebrate the next year and a half and not wallow. They don't want to be sooks about the whole thing, which I think is a fair way to do it. They've had a great connection there for a long time. So they want to do that. At the moment, they're currently working, Ralphie, through some plans to make up the shortfall for the money that's not going to be there post the end of next year. How much is the shortfall, can you tell us?
There was a little bit of sooking last week, wasn't there?
Just a little bit. They moved on this week.
An appropriate amount of sooking. So $4.5 million a year from the Tasmanian government. But they also get things like signage rights down there. They get all the ticket sales. They get the corporate boxes. So, I'd imagine that this pushes it well over $5 million. And so you take that Adelaide game back to the MCG or Marvel, where they don't want to play. Yeah, you might break even on that one. Yeah, it's a significant amount, and I don't think we'll get anywhere near it, even though, of course, they will secure a new major sponsor.
And Lauren, you were at Collingwood training today.
I was, and one man, unfortunately, wasn't in. Bobby Hill was not there today. Now, I can tell you that Bobby's not part of the immediate plans for that forward line, even with the gaping vacancy that's been left by Jamie Elliott with that ACL injury. So Jamie is going to need surgery on that. It's incredibly unfortunate for him. But even with that player missing, John, it doesn't mean that Bobby's going to come back in. So he's had time off recently with the birth of his third child, his former partner, Georgia Devlin. So they had that baby, Hazel Hill, a beautiful little girl over recent days, and Georgia's posted some beautiful photos. But Bobby was granted leave for that. The view from Collingwood is that this isn't going to be a linear process. They've supported him throughout the personal circumstances that he's faced over recent months. He was back in that VFL program, played a full game just before Sir Doug Nicholls' round, and obviously then took this personal leave. But you would think with the Jamie Elliott absence that he could be back in calculations, but unfortunately it's not the case.
Yeah, that's right. So they just picked up Mitch Pajalski, who's a Gisborne podiatrist in the mid-season draft, a 27-year-old from Coburg. He's a sharpshooter. I could see him playing multiple games very, very early on. Macca, Bobby Hill, do you think we'll see him in Collingwood colours again?
I think there's a doubt, absolutely. Yeah. That word linear keeps coming up, and you speak to so many different people that there's a couple of steps forward, then there's a couple of steps
every time
back.
He gets close, all of a sudden it's almost that he's self-sabotaging to not get close to play football again.
So it's going to be one of those scenarios that I think it's nowhere near close at the moment. So there's got to be a doubt. We'll just have to keep watching the space.
Now, Lauren, I'm a very big fan of the Scott Penderbury milestone. I love everything about it. I think it was absolutely fantastic. What's the end figure in the end from how much money he made?
Well, I'm keen to find out from you after the show about the feedback you received after last week. But a very close watch. I am firmly on auction watch, of course, with the match-worn Guernsey and shorts, one of a number of items for sale. So as we sit here tonight, there are still 2 days remaining. As part of that auction, it has topped six figures, I can tell you.
Whoa.
This evening, it has hit $101,050.
What was your bid, Ralphie? First bid?
No, I'm on a journalist way, so no, none for me.
Well, the coin is up as well, the famous number 10 coin tossed by Brent Harvey. That has topped $3,000. And Jamie Elliott's jumper, match-worn jumper with the gold number on the back, has topped $10,000. So obviously everyone hoping that that's not the last time that he is in black and white. But, Glenn, you've got a couple of contract updates to see us out.
Yeah, I can tell you that Jeremy Howe hasn't ruled out playing on again next year. He was banged up at the end of last year and was weighing up what he was going to do. He's basically said that he won't make a decision until the last few weeks of the season. He wants to push it out as far as he can to see how he feels.
He wants to play on, doesn't he? If he doesn't get injured, he plays on.
And that's what he said to me. If I don't, it's a very easy decision to make if I don't get injured. He said he's one injury away from it being the end of his career. But if he is banged up at the end of the year, he'll pull the pin. And there's another couple of other ones. Artie Jones has just put the pause on any contract negotiations at the moment, playing good footy.
Great footy.
Wants to play a little bit more, obviously wants his body. He's had such a horrible run with his injuries. There's a contract table already there from the Bulldogs, but there's a bit of interest from out west. He's just going to let his footy do the talking at the moment. And the last one is Mitch Lewis with the Hawks. They both put it on hold. They wanted to see a little bit about each other to see whether Mitch was playing well enough. We know that Collingwood's interested, Ralphie, but there's no doubt that the Hawks are keen to keep him, and those discussions will keep going over the coming weeks.
Unrestricted free agent. Just not sure that Hawthorn would pay as much as a Collingwood. Let's face it, won't get Ben King. Might be, I think, completely desperate for a unrestricted free agent who is a big key forward who would perfectly fit that role.
Well, the good news is he's playing footy, and that's the bonus so far, isn't it?
It's almost on hold season, isn't it, as these guys look to find form. Now, we'll have all of that news and, of course, all of the fallout and what is next at Essendon at codesports.com.au. It's been great to have you with us on the Midweek Tackle. We'll see you next week.